Welcome to day 2 of Dangerous Prayers Daily Devotional. It's a 7-day devotional that we're going through from the Bible app. I'm reading through the entire thing with you guys. Sometimes I'll do it on the go, like yesterday, and sometimes I will be home, so the production value will be much better. This is going to be primarily for Instagram and TikTok, hence why the layout is vertical. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I apologize about that, but maybe go to Instagram or TikTok and watch these there. These are meant for those platforms, so that's why it looks like that. But let's go right into the devotional portion of it. It's titled, Your Will Be Done. Instead of long, loud, and fancy, the prayers that move God are simple, authentic, and heartfelt. But simple is not the same as safe, and that's the reason I'm compelled to write this. The biggest mistake I made in my prayer life, the reason my prayers were so lame, is because I prayed too safely. I was in a comfort zone with God. I wasn't on fire, and I wasn't cold. My prayers were tepid. But safe, lukewarm prayers don't draw us closer to God or help us reveal his love to this world. Prayers are inherently dangerous. This idea about prayer dawned on me while I was reading about Jesus talking to his Father in the Garden of Gethsemane, just a short time before he gave his life on the cross. Knowing that was ahead, Jesus asked God if there was any other way. Then Jesus, not just a regular disciple or a person in the Bible, but Jesus, the Son of God, prayed a vulnerable and dangerous prayer of submission. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. And that comes from Luke 22:42. And if you haven't read that recently, go read just the entire chapter. Read all of 22 out of Luke and just listen to some of the things Jesus says, because it really is unique as far as the way that Jesus speaks. And it's kind of beautiful when you really think about it. Just the way that he's speaking to the Father it's beautiful. There's no other way to say it. So go read that if you haven't. There's a little bit of homework for you. But moving right on, Jesus never asks us to do something he wouldn't do himself. He calls us to a life of faith, not a life of comfort. Write that down. If you need something to read daily for the rest of these 7 days, write that down and read it every day. He calls us to a life of faith, not a life of comfort. That's something I think that we forget quite often. Instead of coming to him for a safer, easier, stress-free lifestyle, the Son of God challenges us to risk loving others more than ourselves. Instead of indulging our daily desires, he calls us to deny them for something eternal. That would be another good thing to write down. Instead of indulging our daily desires, he calls us to deny them for something eternal. Instead of living by what we want, he tells us to pick up our cross daily and follow his example. I worry that for a lot of people, prayer is like buying a lottery ticket, a chance at a life here on earth that's problem-free, stress-free, and pain-free. For others, prayer is merely a sentimental routine, like reciting a favorite song lyrics or a beloved nursery rhyme from childhood. Yet others pray only because they feel even guiltier if they do not. I find that extraordinarily true. It's the same thing over and over again. There's not a lot of weight behind the words. I'm sure some of you identify with what I'm saying, and honestly, I've been there a lot too. So if you feel like that is you that's in that rut, then use this next 5 days after today to try to get rid of that habit. Try to make your prayer something else. It shouldn't be a routine. Doing the actions should be a routine, but the prayer itself should not be routine. That would be a downfall. But none of these prayers reflect the life Jesus came to give us. Instead, he calls us to leave everything to follow him. Jesus didn't just challenge others to leave their own wills behind. He too lived a dangerous faith. He touched lepers, showed grace to prostitutes, and stood bravely in the face of danger. Then he told us we could do what he did and more. That's another really good one right there. We need to talk about the fact that Jesus touched lepers and showed grace to prostitutes. I think Christianity, I complained about it a lot, we have this problem where we silo ourselves. We silo ourselves in our church. We silo ourselves in our end of social media, our sections of social media. We silo ourselves into, friend groups, whatever it may be. You only hang out with people from church or you only hang out with Christians. And when you do extend past the Christians that you are comfortable with, a lot of time we keep them at arm's reach. You keep them just far enough away that none of their goopy gobby is going to rub off on you, and that's problematic. That's not what Jesus did. That's not what he taught, and it's not what he reflected in his ministry. He literally touched lepers, and he figuratively touched them as well. He did not just hang out with people who believed. He did not just hang out with people who were godly. He was actually very much the other direction. So keep that in mind as you go about your daily life. And that's why we can't settle for simply asking God to bless our food or be with us today. We're told in the Bible that we can come boldly to the throne of our gracious Father, Hebrews 4:16. We don't have to approach timidly or feel awkward. We can come before him with confidence, assurance, and boldness. When we pray this way, then we will receive his mercy and we will find grace to help us when we need it most. That's Hebrews 4:16. He says, your prayer matters. How you pray matters. What you pray matters. Your prayers move God. I think that was awesome. So that's the devotional. Then moving down to Matthew 6:5-8 is one of the verses they give us. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. Pause. So what does that mean? That's the first camp of people that you're going to see in this specific set of verses right here. You have people who are praying in public. People, it may be at church, it may not be at church, but they're praying in public. They're praying loud and proud. They're praying in a way that draws attention. They're praying in a way that's going to get them seen. And he's saying, do not do this. Then he goes on to say, but when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Then goes on to the next camp of people. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like the pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask. So that's the other camp of people. You have people, and depending on your translation, it actually says more than that. But the other camp of people is essentially someone who they pray quick sometimes. They pray full, I guess would be the right way to say it. They use a lot of words. They say a lot of meaningful stuff, but the condition of the heart is not where it should be. So the prayer still falls on deaf ears. So you have two camps of people here. As I said, you have certain people who are praying publicly. They're praying for attention. They're praying for accolades. They're praying to be seen. And then you have another set of people who are just babbling and babbling and babbling, just trying to pray and pray and pray. And there's no meaning behind the words. There's no heart. It's void of any actual positive heart condition, of any actual meaning from that person's heart. And both of these, he says, they're not the ways to pray. You need to pray with intention. You need to pray with a beautiful condition of your heart that's in the right place, trying to do and achieve the right things. Next one is Revelation 3:15-16. You guys know this one. I know your deeds, that you are neither hot nor cold. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, that's why you'll hear lukewarm Christians, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. What is he saying? It kind of relates back to the verse in Matthew, the verses in Matthew that we just read. But he knows your deeds, you are neither hot nor cold, meaning you are not on this end of the spectrum or on this end, meaning not a believer at all or a fervent, absolutely just on fire believer. He says you are lukewarm. You say you believe, you walk the walk to a degree, but you have no vitality in you. You have no extremeness. You have no danger, essentially, with what we're talking about specifically with this devotional. You are lukewarm. You don't have heart. You have no heart. And because of that, you fall on deaf ears. Next one's Luke 22:42. Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Not a lot to say on that one, just a good verse to throw in with what we're talking about. And then Hebrews 4:14-16. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. That's a beautiful part of Jesus's life. But we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. He's the ultimate example of what Christians should be striving for. Not that it's attainable, but should be striving for. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Things to take away here from today's. Prayer should not be boastful. It shouldn't be something you do to get accolades or attention, meaning that you're doing it in public. Does that mean you can't pray in public? Of course not, because it really does come down to the condition of your heart. The other thing to take away from here is that prayer needs to not be routine. The act of praying should be routine, but what happens within your prayer should be contingent on what your heart is actually feeling. It should be a condition of your heart, the outward pouring of your heart. So try to rearrange the way that you're praying, interact with God in a different way, and really put yourself on display. Open up. And then as you get more comfortable, start to dabble into that dangerous side of prayer.